Hey, welcome back. Hopefully you've watched a couple of our other unit videos. Welcome to Unit 10, which is Understanding Decimal Notation of Fractions. It is I, Joe Vertaski, and
I'm Emily DeVizio, and we're happy to have you with us here today.
all right. If you've watched these before, you know that you will have a task to complete. So for this unit, we're going to ask you to pause the video. You can scan that QR code right there, and you're going to play a game called Grab Some Blocks. So once you're done playing that game, you can come back and watch the rest of the video. Don't forget to enroll yourself in the Canvas course for this 4th grade, all of these Math Dive in 5 videos. And when you complete each of those tasks, you will complete an assignment showing that you did the task, and that way you will earn 1 PD point for each of the units.
Make sure you see the link or find the link at the bottom of this mathsmarts.com. You'll see it underneath our video. That's the link to access the Canvas course code if you need to.
All right, see you in a minute.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the previous task.
I had a blast, Emily. It was awesome.
So glad you enjoyed it, Joe. So just to refocus what we're talking about today, decimal fractions. Students have learned about fractions previously in 4th grade and obviously in 3rd grade. We want to make sure that we are connecting to our daily lives. Decimal fractions are everywhere, and below you can see some valuable context that can be used to introduce decimals to your students.
I hear you keep saying decimal fractions. I thought we were just doing decimals. Why are you saying that?
Well, Joe, decimals are a special type of fraction.
Oh, I guess that makes sense why they're called tenths and hundredths, and we have the fractions tenths and hundredths.
Right, we're not dealing with a whole.
So really, once I learn about tenths and hundredths as fractions, I pretty much can work with them as decimals.
Yes. Here we see various models and strategies that are essential to building student understanding and success with the decimal fraction standards. These strategies are located in your unpacked PowerPoint and your instructional guides.
Yeah, there's a lot in those PowerPoints. Make sure you check those out. And just looking at all of these different models, it seems like with these standards, models are going to be very, very, very important for our students to make sense of and understand the work that they do with these decimal fractions, huh?
Definitely supports their building understanding.
And it's important too to remember, we see the base 10 blocks, we see maybe the drawings in the grids, that you're using those side by side. So we're having that concrete to representational to also the abstract and recording those equations along with that. So students are seeing those connections between them.
Joe, I noticed a number line in the middle.
Yes, number lines are very important. With our maths, it isn't explicitly stated that we would use number lines to compare our decimals and our decimal fractions, but it is a tool that we can use and a great strategy. And you'll also see later as we highlight ahead to our best Florida standards that the number line is going to explicitly be part of that benchmark. So we might as well get the students used to using those now so they'll have success in the future.
Being that this is our students' first experience with decimals, they often struggle with using the same models that they've used for base 10 and whole numbers now with decimals. So we really want to spend some time focusing on what each of those base 10 blocks represents, and more importantly, what represents the whole.
That sounds a lot like what we did with fractions.
Yes.
Hopefully where we had different wholes, and that would depend on what that unit fraction would be.
Right, Joe. So it'd be important to, if the flat is one whole, then what does a rod represent and what does a unit represent? Also, the same thing applies to if a rod represents a whole, then what does the unit represent?
And it's important to switch these up because in 5th grade, a lot of our students will now be working with thousandths. So therefore, these place values are going to change with their base 10 blocks as that large cube becomes one whole.
So in reflection to what we just talked about, one of those potential student misconceptions, if you see your students struggling with this, it might be beneficial and they may feel more comfortable working with the 100 grids instead and connecting that to the base 10 model.
Another common misconception you're going to see, especially when adding fractions such as tenths and hundredths together, is that students aren't going to recognize that these are two different types of denominators that they're working with tenths, working with hundredths. Some of them will just add the top numbers, add the top and the bottom, just randomly pick which of the denominator they want to use. So just as we are seeing, we want to use our models. Use those base 10 blocks so we can see the difference between what our tenths and our hundredths look like. Use those hundreds grids along with those base 10 blocks. They've got that more representational model that they can use and make those connections between the two. And just always being sure that you're going back, asking those students what those numbers represent. What are we talking about when we're talking about the numerator and when we're talking about the denominator, and recognizing those are two different types of place values that we're adding together.
Another common misconception that we often see with our students is when they're counting or reading decimals, often they have difficulty bridging, they bridge it to whole numbers. So for example, instead of 8/10, 9/10, 1 whole, 1 and 1/10, 1 and 2/10, many students write 8/10, 9/10, 10/10, 11/10, 12/10. So to address this misconception, it is strongly encouraged to have them look at the decimal built on a hundredths grid so that they can compare and see the contradiction between the two.
It's almost like regrouping. When I have 10 ones, that makes a 10. I'm now switching my place value. Models, models, models. So as students are reading their decimals, they will often struggle depending on where if there's any zeros, not recognizing the zero is just a placeholder, especially with our decimals, because we didn't have that with whole numbers. We wouldn't just throw a bunch of zeros before our numbers to hold that place. We just didn't write anything. But with decimals, we have to put that zero to delineate here whether this is 4/10 or 4/100. And it's very important then that we as teachers model the correct way to read. We would say 3 and 4/100 or 3 and 4/10, not just saying 3.4, 3.2, anything like that. So we want to make sure that we are good models of that.
Another common misconception that we see often with our students is that when they are comparing the decimals, they just really look at simply the digits themselves or which of the two numbers has more digits. So here in this example, you can see when comparing 82 hundredths and 2 wholes, students may think 82 hundredths is greater because of the digit 8, and it also has more digits. Again, going back to what Joe has said, having students create those models with the place value charts to keep track of the place value of each of those digits in the model will strongly support and hopefully help with this particular misconception.
We're back to our CRA Bridge. So this is just a reminder, especially in this unit, models are so important for our students to have success and to truly understand conceptually what we're doing when we're working with our decimal fractions.
Yes, it's important to use those visuals to reach that understanding of students with the decimals. Definitely.
Not a race to get to the abstract.
Nope. Spend the time modeling.
We'll just look really quickly as we transition to best what might be any changes or what might look different. You're going to see a lot of benchmarks for best concerning decimal fractions, sorry. One big thing to look is that explicitly saying plot in order. Well, if you're using number lines, you're already doing that, right, with the maps. That NSO 26 is a new standard, so identifying 1/10 more, 1/10 less, 100th more, 100th less, and exploring addition, subtraction of multi-digit decimals. That'll be a little bit new at 4th grade. Here you see a couple of our everything with tenths and hundredths with fractions. Basically, it is the same.
You know, Joe, what I was just thinking as you were talking about the addition and subtraction and the new things, the concepts that will be added to 4th grade, if we really teach for understanding, then we shouldn't have much of a problem teaching that to our students because they'll have that foundational understanding to support them.
I agree. I don't think it looks like there's a lot of new benchmarks, but really it's not that different of what we had with maps. Here's just kind of a summary of the overall changes. And like you said, it's important. We're looking at that explore portion of what adding and subtracting with decimals will look like. And explore is one of the first stages of that procedural fluency under the new BEST.
Kind of what we talked a lot about today.
Basically, more models, right? All right, well, thanks for tuning in to another Math Dive in About 5. Be on the lookout for the next unit coming up soon.
You all are rock star teachers. We appreciate you.
2 gold stars.